Hey, everybody, this is Nancy Baker. I am the founder of Healing Healthy with Nancy, and I am just really excited to have this conversation today with Angela Gentile. She's going to answer some questions for me. I like to just facilitate different types of conversation when it comes to health and wellness, and whether it be um, diet, food, exercise, whatever type of topic. I love just talking about different things just so that we can all learn from one another. And, you know, I've been struggling with some stuff with my parents, and I just happened to come across Angela, and I was like, we need to have a conversation and record this for other people because I think it's really important for other people to understand. So the topic that we're talking about today is really, are you dealing or trying to help a parent who has memory problems, or some type of cognitive decline, and you just kind of really don't know where to start? And Angela is, it's really funny. I find the world or the universe is such a funny place. We just kind of got connected. And Angela mentioned what she did, and she has over 25 years of working with older adults. And she's the author of a couple of books. One of the books is Dementia, she has an app called is it Dementia Caregiver Solution, and then caring for a husband with dementia. So she has lots of experience, and she's a geriatric mental health clinician. So I'm really excited to have this conversation with you, Angela. So I just want to say thanks for taking the time to just have this dialogue. It's really much appreciated.
Well, thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk. It's been a pleasure getting to know you, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah. So Angela and I decided to have this conversation, and we're like, oh, we should talk about this topic, and then we should talk about this topic. So I'm sure we'll have more dialogue and more topics and conversations to have in the future. But for this time, I guess I'm going to kind of take you guys through a little bit of what I've been kind of dealing with. And I'm sure there's others that are dealing with this exact same issue. So one of my parents has some significant cognitive decline in terms of memory. And it's really interesting because I think we all kind of noticed it. I actually live in Alberta, and my parents live on the other side of the country. So I don't see them every day. I talk to them every day, or I talk to them every other day, but I didn't really know for sure kind of what was going on. There were things like having a conversation with my mom, and then, a couple of days later, her not really remembering the conversation, or there were all kinds of different like little things, but nothing that was so extremely obvious. And then lo and behold, my dad ended up getting really sick, and I had to fly home recently. This is about a month and a half ago. I had to fly home, and in the process of doing that and staying with my mom, it became extremely apparent that there were some serious memory problems and significant cognitive decline. And the issue is that we didn't even know where to start. Like, how do you even start with that? So Angela, I'll just ask you, like, what do you see when you have people come and talk to you about that type of thing? Where did they start?
Well, in my day job, I receive referrals. So the referrals can come from doctors, neighbors, family members, home care also sends us referrals. And what we find is the main problem by the time it comes to us as professionals, the main problem is behavioral problems. So my mom won't have a bath anymore. She says she already had one, but I know she didn't. What do we do with dad? He's still driving, and I don't think it's safe for him. My mom, I think, might be depressed. She's not going anywhere. She's not doing anything. So when I start talking to the family members or other professionals about their concerns, I start by asking them, like, when did you notice these changes? And How long has it been going on for? Has your mom or your dad or your friend had any major strokes or any major medical problems? Even things like grief and loss can cause people to have cognitive problems. So we have to kind of tease through what is going on. And one of the first things is we want people to go to the hospital if it's emergency. Like if it's a delirium where they're very confused, acutely, like quickly and extremely confused, or delusional or hallucinating, or make an appointment with your doctor to make sure that there's nothing medical going on. So make sure that your thyroid is okay, your vitamin B12 and your blood levels, your anemia, you don't have anemia, that all those things are okay, because sometimes there is a medical problem that can be causing this. Mm-hmm. So then once we rule out that there's no physical problems going on, that's where we start to say, okay, well, let's do some cognitive testing. So let's do what we call the mini mental status exam. Let's ask, like, do you know what date it is? Can you remember those 3 words that I told you to remember? Those sorts of things. So then it gives us a good sense of how does this person compare to other people that might have memory problems on a scale of, on a out of 30, like maybe the person scores 28, and that's kind of normal. But maybe they score 20, which is a big problem. So the whole diagnosis process is quite involved, and a lot of the times it's not just one person. It's a clinician, it's a doctor, it could be therapists, occupational therapists can get involved, neurologists,
Can I ask a question there?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the big issues is they're your parents, right? And so I'm not involved, and most people aren't involved in the day-to-day with their parents, with their doctors. Like,
Mm-hmm.
When somebody doesn't recognize that they're having memory issues or cognitive issues,
Mm-hmm.
like, how do you get them to the doctor?
Mm-hmm.
In the beginning, when we first started noticing this, we didn't know really what to do. Luckily, in this case, my mom's doctor brought it up first, and she actually reached out to us. But in a lot of cases, like, how do you get that ball rolling? If you have a parent that's not seeing that they have an issue, how do you get them to the doctor?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's a struggle in
Mm-hmm.
itself. Do you just call their doctor and ask to have a conversation with them? I'm not sure what the process is there.
Well, again, that's part of what I do in my day job. So I'm hoping that there are other programs like this across Canada.
What's the name of your program?
The Geriatric Mental Health Team. Okay. So it's also known as the Psychogeriatric Team, or any kind of geriatric clinic or geriatrician can do these kinds of assessments. So yes, exactly that. When we have a person who does not recognize that they have a problem, that is a problem in and of itself, because maybe their brain has got to the point now where they don't have the capacity to recognize that they have a problem. And that's usually when they have already progressed into some form of dementia. Mm-hmm. So it's beyond the normal aging process of maybe having some memory problems. It's beyond that.
Can you maybe explain the difference to me between Alzheimer's and dementia?
Mm-hmm. So a lot of people kind of see Alzheimer's and dementia as the same thing. And I like to explain it like this, where dementia is like an umbrella term. So you see the word dementia, and dementia has all kinds of problems, memory problems, speaking problems, calculation, problems with calculating, all kinds of different, it's a syndrome of problems. But what causes dementia are a few different things. There's many things, and the main one is Alzheimer's disease. So Alzheimer's disease is I think it causes about 70% of the cases of dementia are Alzheimer's type dementias. So then there's other things like maybe the person had a stroke or mini stroke, so that's a vascular type dementia. There's Lewy body dementia, which isn't as popular, or which isn't as common, but we do see that. We see mixed dementias, so we might have a little bit of Alzheimer's, a little bit of vascular dementia. So again, that whole term dementia is like a category. It's like a higher level. But I use the word dementia because to me that covers all of those types of conditions that cause dementia.
So it's kind of like, having cancer. There's not just one kind of cancer. There's many different kinds of cancer.
Yes.
So it's the same. I never realized that before about dementia. I've heard the words dementia and Alzheimer's, but I kind of just liken them to the same thing.
Yes,
so it's interesting that there can be different reasons or different causes for the cognitive issues.
And there is still quite a bit of stigma with the word Alzheimer's. So some people might say to me, well, I don't have Alzheimer's. And I'm thinking, well, maybe you do, but maybe you don't. And same with the family members, like, oh, Alzheimer's. But once you say dementia, then it's almost like, oh, okay, well, what is that? It's a little easier to process and to understand.
So what are the steps, or what's it like to get diagnosed? Like, what actually happens? I know so far with in our case, there's been lots of doctor's appointments, and there's been an assessment, and there's been a few different things. But what's a typical diagnosis look like? What's the train look like to get diagnosed?
Well, I can speak mainly from my own perspective, and I would be considered like a specialized service. So the referral comes to our team, and I take a look at it. I go out and see the person. I do an assessment. I do cognitive tests, which is, like I mentioned, that mini mental status exam. I do a mood assessment. So I want to see, is there any kind of depression or anxiety or any other mood issues that may be causing this person to be having problems? Insomnia. There's all kinds of things that can be causing this person's cognitive impairment. Also, like I mentioned earlier, the medical problems. So once we've ruled out that there's no other thing that could be going on, then we come to the point where I discuss it with the geriatric psychiatrist that I work with, and we decide together that yes, the diagnosis for this person is, for example, vascular dementia. It could be also an Alzheimer's type dementia or a mixed dementia. So it takes, sometimes it takes CT scans. People get scans of their brain to see if there's been any stroke or any activity that way, or a brain tumor. There's a collateral information, like I have to ask the family, even though mom says she showers every day, what are you seeing? Well, no, she doesn't. So we get collateral information from the doctor, home care, family, friends, neighbors, whoever wants to share information with us. And and that's how we come to our conclusion.
So I guess it can be a long process to actually get diagnosed with dementia or Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
And I know, just from my perspective of being the child, which I know I'm like almost 50 years old, but that's still my mom. It's still, I'm still her child. And it's it's difficult, I think, for family members to, I don't know, I guess it's, when someone's diagnosed with another type of disease, if it's cancer, or if they, have some kind of kidney issue, or if they have something, it's easier to reconcile that. But it's so difficult to reconcile when your parents has a cognitive issue where they, you know, they're either very hostile towards you, or they're not remembering certain things. This is the first Christmas that I've ever not had a Christmas present from my parents. You know,
Oh.
it's so I'm sure that other people are dealing with the same types of emotions, but are there support groups, or are there things like that available to family members to try and reconcile, not just for themselves, but how to help somebody, and how to deal with somebody who has Alzheimer's or dementia?
Yeah, for sure. The Alzheimer's Society has chapters all across Canada, and they have lots of resources. Support groups are definitely one of the more popular services that we recommend. In Winnipeg, where I am, they have the First Link program, which is providing newly, well, they're not necessarily newly diagnosed, sometimes they are, but families that are new to this whole idea of helping somebody with Alzheimer's or a dementia. The First Link will put them together with a person in the information department of the Alzheimer's Society, and they will provide them with lots of information, all the different groups and other programs, Minds in Motion. There's all kinds of things that they can educate you on and provide you information on. So yeah, I would say Alzheimer's Society is a really good resource for that.
So now you've developed an app. Can you talk a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, so this is my book, Caring for Husband with Dementia. And in chapter 14, I have all the information that's on my Dementia Caregiver Solutions app. So what it is it's a wide variety of problem areas that a person might run up against when they're trying to help somebody with dementia. It's usually in the moderate stages of dementia where it starts to get a little more difficult. So, for example, this chapter is coping with difficult behaviors. And I've got the whole list of all the different areas. So, aggression, so when the person gets more aggressive. We also call it responsive behaviors. So, the person's not quite understanding or coping well because of their diminished capacity to use their brain as they used to.
Can I ask you a question there? So do you find with people who are dealing with dementia, they go through kind of phases, like, you know, does the aggression kind of diminish and move on to something else? Or, you know, I found in our own case, a lot of aggressive behavior, which is now kind of, it's getting a little bit more despondent than aggression. Like, is that a common thing?
Yeah, the behaviors will change over time. So when we're teaching families or educating caregivers about how to handle certain behaviors and how to respond, sometimes it's like, okay, once you've got it figured out, then it changes. So they might at first be very, you know, we'll call, sometimes we hear them called pleasantly confused. A person who has dementia is pleasantly confused. And then in time, things start to deteriorate and get a little more difficult. And then that can change into more belligerent, or the kinds of behavior that come out can start presenting as, well, my dad used to be like that, but now he's really bad. Like he used to be able to not swear as much, and now he's swearing a lot. So it's like their filters, their ability to filter out what they used to say or how they used to handle themselves is gone. So now if they think that, they say that. So there's all kinds of things that can happen.
You know, I'm a huge like essential oil lover, and one of the things that I was doing when I was actually at home with my parents was, you know, I was using oils a lot with my mom. Frankincense, especially, it's very healing to the brain. But in particular, I was using oils like lavender, vetiver, things like that are very calming oils. I found in the evening, the evening was kind of worse than the rest of the day. And so I would use a lot of oils at the evening on the back of, at the back of her neck and on the soles of her feet. What is it with the evening? Why does it seem to be escalated in the evening?
So there's a term we use, it's called sundowning. And we find for people with dementia, they sometimes become more agitated, restless, wanting to go home, even though they're at home. They start to feel that sense of, it's almost like when you go back to your days when you were working and it's time to go home. It's like that feeling starts to really build up. And there's not a lot of things we can do to prevent it. We have seen some people trying, like, keeping the daylight hours really bright, and then as soon as dusk starts to hit, close all the blinds, turn all the lights on in the house. So for some people that works. We've seen people take the person who wants to go home, take them for a drive, just get them out of the house, make them feel like they're getting out and going somewhere. That helps. Some people need medication. I know there's a lot of controversy about that, but there are certain medications that can help calm the person down. So sundowning is a big problem for
What are your
for a
thoughts
lot of
around
people.
aggression? Like, what recommendations do you have around dealing with aggression?
Well, a lot of it has to do with how we respond to the person. So we have to remember that the person with dementia is ill, and the way that they're responding, it's not them, it's the dementia. That's how I explain it in my book. It's like you've got a third party involved. You got your mom and dementia. So now you're dealing with, mom who you know and love, and dementia. So sometimes we have to think of it as, we're going to try and trick dementia. So not tricking mom, but tricking dementia so that we're all happy. So if mom says, like, I really want to go see my mom. Like, sometimes people forget, right, that their parents have passed. And then you can say, instead of saying, well, your mom died 20 years ago. Instead of saying that, you can say, you know what? We will go, but let's go tomorrow. Let's have a good night's sleep. Or, you kind of have to trick dementia. Whereas if you respond in a way that you're saying, your mom died 20 years ago. Can't you remember that? And then the person with dementia would get, well, no, my mom isn't dead. So then you're aggravating the situation, because the person with dementia cannot understand what you're saying. They don't, that's not their reality. So a lot of the behaviors that we see are because of the way the caregiver is responding to them.
One of the things that we really try to do, and everybody in our family has agreed, is not saying, don't you remember? Or we told you that yesterday, or it doesn't matter what the conversation is. We just go with the flow as if, of course, I'm going to answer this for the 100th time, or I'm going to show you where you put that for the 100th time. Really try to do that. But I have seen, out in public, I've seen people kind of scold them for, like, I've already told you that 1,000 times. So
it's unfortunate.
And another thing that I'm curious about is it common for dementia and Alzheimer's patients to kind of seclude themselves from the rest of their family? And what we've found is, kind of pushing away friends and family and really isolating herself. Is that something that's common?
Well, I've seen it definitely when people become delusional. For example, an older woman started to believe that her sons were out to get her, like they wanted all her money and they wanted her to go move into a nursing home. Meanwhile, the family's talking to me saying, no, that's not the case. Like, we want mom to be at home as long as possible. So sometimes delusions can cause some of that isolation. Apathy, which is like not having feelings, happens when people are when they have dementia, because they really don't have the ability to plan things. and they don't really, they just don't have the same joie de vivre as they used to have because of the apathy. It's just part of the dementia process. So that could end up, making them not want to go anywhere. But then again, we have to be careful that it's not depression. Mm-hmm. So that's where a good assessment.
So you can have both, right?
Yes, you can have both. Yeah. Okay. Dementia, delirium, and depression are the big 3 Ds that we always want to make sure, is it this, is it that, or the other, or a mixture? And then we know what we're dealing with. Delirium's a big one too.
Another, I'll ask this last question, and then I won't keep you any longer because I could talk about this for forever. But do you find it common where the spouse or the partner kind of covers up what's going on in the household? Because we kind of knew a little bit, but we really didn't have any idea how bad it was. And I think my dad was really good at kind of covering up for her. Is that a common thing that happens?
Well, yeah, I don't know if the person's deliberately covering up. I think of it like that analogy called how to boil a frog. So you have a pot of water. It's sitting on the stove. It's cold. You put a frog in it. You turn on the element. The water starts to boil. The frog doesn't even know that the water is boiling, and that's how the frog dies. So I think it's the same for long-term marriages, where we see the people living together, they're doing fine, and then maybe one of the partners starts to have a little bit of problem with their memory, so the other one kind of ups it a bit, and then the relationship continues on, but it slowly, progressively gets worse for the person with dementia. And the person the caregiver, the well spouse, is actually not really aware of how bad it is until somebody says, how are you doing? What is going on for you? And just have a good assessment to see how much are you doing and what are you doing for mom or dad or whoever. So yes, we do see it, but I don't know if the person's covering it up intentionally. I think it's just a natural progression, especially in long-term marriages.
Okay, that's really interesting. Thank you so much. I just really want to thank you for taking the time to have a chat with me.
Oh, you're welcome.
So I just want to remind people, Angela Gentile's book is called Caring for a Husband with Dementia, and she's also the author of another book called Cancer Up the Wazoo, and the Dementia Caregiver Solution app is also available.
Yeah, that's the app.
Okay, perfect.
I don't know if you can see that. Yeah.
So if you have any questions, shout out, and everybody have a great night. And thanks a lot, Angela. It was really great.
Thank you, Nancy. It's been great.